On the night of the third wedding anniversary, Lily Carter sat alone in a high-rise apartment in Manhattan, with a strawberry cream cake in front of her that she spent all afternoon making. She waited for 3 hours. The cream on the cake has begun to collapse, the candles are burned to the bottom, and the wax drips on the white frosting like solidified tears. The phone screen lit up. She thought it was Ethan's message. No. It is a piece of news pushed by social media, from the entertainment section of the New York Post, accompanied by a high-definition photo. Ethan Cole, her legal husband, put his arms around Charlotte Hayes at a private charity dinner at the New York Public Library. The two stood face to face, smiling intimately. Charlotte's hands were on his chest, and Ethan's hands were on her waist. The headline read, Wall Street upstart Ethan Cole and socialite Charlotte Hayes are suspected of being engaged. Insiders call it a match made in heaven. There have been more than 2,000 comments under the photo, and no one has mentioned the name Lily Carter because no one knows she exists. Lily looked at the photo for about 10 seconds. She didn't cry. She wasn't even too surprised. Then the phone rang again. This time it was a phone call. She glanced at the caller ID. It was the oncology department at New York Presbyterian Hospital. She picked up. The nurse's voice was professional and steady, as if she was reading a weather forecast. Ms. Carter, your biopsy results are out. Hepatocellular carcinoma, stage 4. We have arranged imaging examinations next week to determine the extent of spread, but our preliminary judgment you need to start treatment as soon as possible. Next time you come, it is best to bring your family with you. Lily didn't say anything after listening. She hung up. Then she glanced at the cake, glanced at the photo on her phone, and said, I don't have one. She has no family. The husband who was supposed to accompany her to the hospital was now holding another woman in his arms and being blessed by the entire New York social circle. She didn't scream, she didn't smash things, she didn't call to question. She just stood up, dumped the whole cake into the trash can, washed the dishes, and put them back in the cupboard. Then she sat on the sofa and started to think about something, not how to survive, how it disappeared. She spent 2 days doing one thing, erasing the existence of Lily Carter from the earth bit by bit. On the first morning, she opened the cloakroom. Ethan's suits are arranged according to color and season, like museum exhibits. Her clothes were squeezed into a corner, just a small row, mostly plain basic styles, because she didn't want Ethan to think she was too fancy. She took off all the clothes, folded them, and put them in black garbage bags. It's not a luxury brand, not worth consigning. She hailed a car and was taken directly to a women's shelter on the Lower East Side. The shelter staff asked her name to register. She said, no need. Then she goes home, turns on her computer, and logs on to all social platforms. Instagram, 52 followers, most of them are people I met at the art exhibition. Facebook, 143 friends, half of whom are Ethan's colleagues and clients. Twitter, which she barely uses. She clicked in one by one, not logging out of her account but completely deleting every post, every photo, and every comment. She posted a photo of the watercolor painting she painted in Central Park 3 years ago with the caption Central Park in the first autumn. Delete. The illustration series she did 2 years ago about urban loneliness was forwarded by someone and said, this girl has talent. Delete. She even deleted all photos with Ethan. Not a lot, just 6 in total. One on the wedding day, one when moving, and a few times when he occasionally took her to events. It took her 4 hours to delete these things. Eventually there was nothing on her social media page. The avatar turns into a gray default image, and the introduction is blank. She sat in front of the computer and clicked on Ethan's homepage. He has 140,000 followers on Instagram. The latest one was posted last night, a selfie with the law firm's floor-to-ceiling windows in the background, with the caption working overtime late at night. This is what success looks like. Someone commented below, isn't Charlotte around? Ethan responded with a crying laughing emoji. Lily closed the page. The next day, she went out to the bank. She and Ethan have a joint account, but her own secondary card is in the name of Ethan's primary card. Without discussing it with Ethel, she directly asked the teller to remove her name from the account and cancel the secondary card. The teller asked her, are you sure? This way you don't have a personal account. She said, sure. Then she withdrew the little money she had saved before marriage, less than $20,000. This was something she saved as a freelance illustrator and has nothing to do with Ethan. She transferred the money to a separate savings card. On the way home, she passed the art supply store in Chelsea where she often went. The boss is an old Greek man who always smiles when he sees her and asks, what are you drawing today? She stood at the door and stared for a while, but did not go in. Because she had already started cleaning up the painting. She has drawn more than 100 illustrations in the past few years, some of which were commercial drafts received, and some of which she wanted to draw herself. She picked out the ones she really liked, contacted a small gallery in Brooklyn, and asked them to take them all, exhibit them for free, and dispose of them after the exhibition, giving them to people who bought the paintings or donating them. The curator of the gallery is a young girl named Maya, and her eyes lit up when she saw those paintings. Are you sure? These paintings can be sold for money. Lily said, I'm sure. Maya glanced at her, probably thinking she was crazy, but didn't ask any more questions. She tore up the remaining paintings that she was not satisfied with and threw them into the garbage room downstairs of the apartment. She even deleted all the contacts on her phone. It's not blocking, it's deleting. Her address book went from more than 100 people to 3, Ethan, her primary doctor, and the management of her mother's cemetery. Her mother died 10 years ago. That was her last relative. After doing all this, Lily sat in the empty apartment and suddenly felt very quiet. Not because no one spoke, but because she felt like she was becoming a non-existent person. Ethan came back that night. This itself was an accident. He hasn't had dinner at home for 2 weeks. When he walked in, his suit was neatly straightened, his hair was not messed up, and he smelled of cologne and whiskey. He saw Lily sitting on the sofa in the living room with a notebook on her lap, writing something. He changed his shoes, came over and sat down opposite her. Have you eaten? He asked. Not yet. I ate it. There is entertainment at the law firm. He paused, as if he suddenly remembered something. By the way, how are you doing lately? This question was so perfunctory that Lily almost laughed. She looked at him and suddenly asked, if I disappear, would you notice? Ethan frowned. He hated this kind of dramatic question. Don't be dramatic, he said, his tone cold, as if he were dismissing a complaint with insufficient evidence. Then he stood up, went to the refrigerator to get a bottle of mineral water, walked into the study, and closed the door. Lily was sitting in the living room when she heard the study door lock click. She looked down at the notebook on her lap. It was a blank Moleskine notebook. She bought it 3 years ago and has never been willing to use it. Now she writes on it. Not a diary. Is an article. The title is, A Marriage No One Saw. She began to write. Write about how they met at an open-air art exhibition in Central Park. She set up a stall to sell her illustrations. He passed by and bought a piece of her painting of the Brooklyn Bridge. That was the fall of 2019. When he was chasing her, he sent messages every day, sent flowers, took her to fancy restaurants she had never been to, said he liked her quietness, and said she was different from other girls. When she wrote about his proposal in her favorite little bookstore, she knelt down on one knee and said, You are my most right choice. She paused as she wrote this. The most correct choice. She thought it was love. Now she understands that that is not love. That's choice. Just like choosing a stock, choosing a property, choosing the right suit. She was the right choice, not the one he loved. She continued writing. Right about the first month after marriage, he took her to the annual meeting of the law firm, introduced her by saying, This is my wife, and then left, not coming back to look for her all night. She stood alone in the corner, holding a glass of champagne, watching him chatting and laughing among the crowd. Half a year after the marriage, he began to work overtime frequently and was not at home on weekends. She cooked a table of dishes and waited for him. Waiting until midnight, he sent a message saying, I won't be coming back. I have a case to deal with. It took her 3 days to finish the dishes by herself. Writing about a year after marriage, Charlotte Hayes appears. It doesn't appear suddenly, it has always been there. Ethan's childhood sweetheart is a core figure in Manhattan's celebrity circle. His family is engaged in real estate and he is a director of a charitable foundation. She is beautiful, smart, and confident. When she stood with Ethan, everyone said, You two are a perfect match. Lily first met Charlotte at an event at Ethan's company. Charlotte came over, looked her up and down, smiled and said, Oh, you must be Lily. Ethan told me about you. That tone is like saying, I heard you bought a new scarf. Lily's hands were shaking a little as she wrote this, but she continued writing. Writing about the second year after marriage, Ethan began to forget her birthday. I still remember that I was given a necklace as a gift in my first year, although the style was obviously chosen with the help of my assistant. The next year, she completely forgot about it. She waited until 11 o'clock in the evening. When he came back, he said, I'm too tired today, and she didn't remind him. Writing about the countless nights she spent alone, she sat by the window painting, and outside the window was the night view of Manhattan, with thousands of lights, but none of them were lit for her. Write about the moments when she was trying to communicate with him, she said, can we spend more time together? And he said, I'm very busy at work, you know. She said, I don't think you love me anymore. And he said, you're here again, can you stop being so sensitive? She said, what's the relationship between Charlotte and you? And he said, friends, we've known each other since childhood, don't think too much about it. She didn't ask any more questions. Because she knows the answer. That answer isn't we're innocent, it's you're not important enough for me to explain. She wrote to the last line, 3 years ago, I thought I was married to someone who loved me. 3 years later, I realized that I was just a stranger living in his apartment. He didn't abuse me, didn't scold me, or even spoke loudly to me. He just never really saw me. And it took me 3 years to learn to accept the fact that in a relationship, the cruelest thing is not hatred, but neglect. After writing the article, she posted it to an anonymous submission platform. Then she turned off the computer. That night, she lay next to Ethan, his back to her, breathing steadily, and fell asleep. She looked at the back of his head for a long time. Then she closed her eyes and remembered the words stage 4 liver cancer on the phone from the hospital. She didn't tell him. No, it wasn't just that she hadn't told him, she had decided that she would never tell him. Not because she hates him, but because she suddenly realized something. What would he do if she told him? He would accompany her to the hospital out of duty, sit by her bedside for hours, hold her hand while she underwent chemotherapy. But that's not love, that's obligation. He will handle the matter as a case, analyze the situation, formulate a plan, and execute the plan. And she didn't want to spend the last few months of her life being treated like a case. So she decided she doesn't want his pity, his guilt, or his company in the last moments. What she wants is, before he could react, he completely disappeared, reducing herself to a vague memory, someone he wasn't even sure existed. She wanted him to suddenly remember one day and discover, there are no photos of her, no social accounts of her, no paintings of hers, no traces of her. Nothing. It's like she's never been here. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan experienced a subtle change. He started to go home for dinner. Not every day, but more than the past 2 years combined. Probably 3 or 4 times a week. He would send a message in advance saying, if you don't work overtime today, go home and eat. Then he would get home around 7 o'clock, change his clothes, and sit at the dining table. Lily can cook. She cooks very well, which she learned from her mother. But she never mentioned it to Ethan because he never asked. Now she still cooks, braised pork ribs, steamed sea bass, garlic broccoli. Ethan ate and occasionally said it tastes good. One night, after eating, he looked at her and said, you've lost weight. You okay? Lily's chopsticks paused for a moment. Just for a moment. She looked at him. His expression was very flat, as if he was asking nice weather today. But something moved in her heart, very light, very small, like a fire that was about to go out and was suddenly blown by the wind. I'm fine, she said. Ethan nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Another time, she accidentally cut her finger while chopping vegetables in the kitchen, and blood dripped on the chopping board. She hissed quietly, and Ethan came over from the living room, took a look, and said, the Band-Aid is in the second drawer. Then he stood nearby and watched her apply the Band-Aid. Why are you so careless, he said, a little reproachful in his tone, but not entirely reproachful. Lily lowered her head, staring at the circle of beige Band-Aids on her fingers, and suddenly felt her nose was a little sore. She was thinking, if he could stay like this, even just like this, look at her one more time, ask her, are you okay one more time, would she be different? That night, she sat alone in the bathroom, turned on her phone, and searched for stage 4 liver cancer treatment success rate. The search results were brutal. The 5-year survival rate is less than 5%. Chemotherapy can only be extended for a few months. Liver transplantation depends on the spread of the disease, and in her case, there is a high probability that it will no longer be possible. But she still stared at the screen for a long time. She was thinking, if she stayed, if she started treatment, if Ethan continued to come home occasionally for dinner and occasionally ask her, are you okay, as he did now, would she be able to survive it? Not for him. It's for yourself. Because she suddenly realized that she was not ready to die. She still has many paintings to finish, many places she has not visited, and she has not yet held an exhibition of her own in that small gallery in Brooklyn. She still wants to live. This thought made her sit in the bathroom for an hour until the water got cold. The next day, she did something she thought was a bit stupid. She went to Ethan's study and knocked on the door. Come in. She pushed the door open and walked in. Ethan was sitting at the desk with a pile of documents spread out in front of him. He looked up at her. What's wrong? Lily stood at the door, hesitated, and said, I haven't been feeling well recently and want to go to the hospital for a checkup. Are you free next Wednesday? Can you go with me? She didn't say it was oncology. She was just testing. Ethan looked at her for 2 seconds, then looked down at the calendar on the table. Next Wednesday? No, I have a client meeting that day. What about Thursday? There are arrangements for Thursday as well. Friday? Ethan put down his pen and looked at her, his expression a little impatient. Lily, I'm busy. Can't you go by yourself? After he said this, he lowered his head and continued to read the documents. Lily stood in the doorway, holding on to the doorframe. She opened her mouth to say, I have cancer. But when the words came to her lips, she swallowed them back. Because she suddenly realized something. If she told him, he might go with her. But that accompanying was not because she needed it, but because a husband should accompany his wife to the hospital. That's responsibility, not care. And what she wants is not responsibility. Even if she didn't say anything, he should have noticed. But apparently, he didn't. She closed the door, returned to the bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed. The screen of her phone lit up, and it was a reminder of the search history she had set, an email from the MD Anderson Cancer Center she had checked before, saying that there might be spots in a new clinical trial. She took a look and put down the phone. False hope. That false hope was she thought that Ethan had started to notice her, that the marriage could still be saved, that she could fight for treatment for this weak warmth. But she was wrong. Because Charlotte Hayes is here. That afternoon, Lily was packing her things alone at home. She continued to clean up her belongings because she hadn't given up on her plan to disappear yet. The doorbell rang. She opened the door and saw Charlotte Hayes standing outside. Charlotte wore an ivory cashmere coat and carried a Birkin bag. Her hair was perfectly curled on her shoulders, and her lips were red lipstick. She stood at the door, tilting her head slightly, looking at Lily, with the kind of polite, but warm-hearted smile she usually used in social situations. Lily, can I come in? This is not a question. She has already stepped in. Lily stepped aside. Charlotte walked into the living room, looked around, and her eyes paused on the empty wall. Lily had taken down all the paintings, leaving only a few holes left by nails on the wall. Are you moving? Charlotte asked. No. Charlotte nodded and didn't ask any more questions. She sat down directly on the sofa, crossed her legs, and put her bag next to her. Then she looked at Lily and said, I'll be direct. Ethan and I are going to get married. He's already working on the divorce papers. We've even booked the engagement venue. It's at the Plaza, the Grand Ballroom. You should know, he's been calling you the mistake he needs to fix. Lily stood there, wearing home clothes, her hair tied casually, and her hands were still stained with dust from when she was sorting things. She looked at Charlotte, her flawless face, the coat that cost more than their monthly rent, and the I-win curve at the corner of her mouth. Lily said nothing. She didn't even feel angry. She just felt cold. A kind of cold seeping from the bones. Charlotte stood up, patted the non-existent dust on her skirt, walked to the door, and looked back at her. I'm not trying to be cruel, Lily. But you deserve to know the truth. He doesn't love you. He never did. You were just convenient. The door is closed. Lily stood there for a long time. Then she walked to the window and looked down at the street. Charlotte's car, a black Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, was pulling away from the curb and merging into Manhattan traffic. She suddenly remembered something. When she married Ethan 3 years ago, Charlotte didn't come. She said she was in Europe on business. But Lily later saw on social media that Charlotte was actually attending a party in the Hamptons that day. In the photo, she was wearing a white dress and smiling happily. Lily didn't think much of it at the time. Now she figured it out. That night, Ethan didn't go home for dinner. It was already 1 o'clock in the morning when he came back. Lily didn't sleep, sitting in the living room with a notebook on her lap. Ethan pushed the door in and was stunned for a moment when he saw that she was still awake. Why aren't you asleep yet? Waiting for you. Ethan frowned, walked over, took out a document from his briefcase, and placed it on the coffee table. Lily glanced down. It was a divorce agreement. The words on the cover are large and bold in black, stipulation of settlement agreement. Ethan sat down opposite her, crossed his arms, and had the same expression he used in court, calm, rational, and unemotional. Lily, he said, this is better for everyone. Better for everyone. Lily looked at the agreement without opening it. She didn't need to read the content, she knew what was in it. She would get a sum of money, an apartment, sign and disappear. She wasn't angry. She didn't even cry. She just felt ridiculous. The review results she was holding in her hand were hidden in the drawer under the coffee table. That was the electronic report sent by the hospital this afternoon, and she printed it out. The report reads, cancer cells have spread to the lymphatic system, the effect of chemotherapy is limited, and the estimated survival time, 3 months. She only had 3 months left to live. And her husband, on this night, handed her a divorce agreement and said, "This is better for everyone." Lily raised her head and looked at Ethan. She smiled. That smile stunned Ethan for a moment. Not because the smile was too pretty, but because there was no sadness, no anger, or even sarcasm in that smile. There is only a very quiet, almost compassionate tolerance. It's like watching a child who doesn't know anything. "Okay," she said, "I'll sign. But not today." Ethan glanced at her, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he just nodded. "Okay. You think about it. Give it to me next week." He stood up and walked into the bedroom. Lily sat in the living room, took out the review results from under the coffee table, and placed them next to the divorce agreement. One copy told her, "You are going to die." One tells her, "Your marriage is dead." She looked at these two documents and suddenly felt, at least they are consistent. That night, Lily didn't sleep. She sat on the kitchen floor, her back against the refrigerator, her knees drawn to her chest, her face buried in them. She didn't cry. She was just thinking about one thing. Has she ever been truly seen by anyone in her life? Her mother passed away when she was 18 years old. Before she left, she held her hand and said, "You have to take care of yourself." She took care of it, but she didn't know what taking care of herself meant. When Ethan chased her, she thought he finally saw her. But now she understands that what he sees is not her, but a suitable wife candidate, quiet, non-troublesome, non-competitive, and will not disturb his career and social life. When Charlotte came to the door, she thought that at least Charlotte saw her an obstacle that needed to be removed. But no one saw the real her. The one who paints late at night, the one who feeds the pigeons in Central Park, the one who sings while cooking in the kitchen, the one who is afraid of thunder and will huddle under the quilt and tremble every time it thunders. No one knows this. Because no one ever asked. She sat on the floor all night, until the window began to lighten and the Manhattan skyline was painted orange. She stood up, walked to the bathroom, and looked at herself in the mirror. His complexion was very poor, his eyes were heavily darkened, and his lips were chapped. The collarbone protrudes and the cheekbones protrude, making it look like a skeleton that is not quite dead yet. She looked at herself in the mirror and said, "You're going to disappear. But not like they want." Then she began executing her final plan. Step 1. Complete erasure of existence. She spent 2 days clearing out everything related to her in the apartment. Not throwing away, disappearing. She deleted all the photos. Not just on social media, but also in the photo album on your phone, on your computer, and in cloud backups. She even dug out the photo album at home, pulled out all her photos, put them in an envelope, and sent them to the management of her mother's cemetery so they could place them next to the tombstone. She knew no one would look. But at least her picture won't remain in that apartment. She donated all the remaining clothes in her closet and emptied out her shoes, bags, scarves, and jewelry. She even replaced daily necessities such as toothbrushes, towels, and cups with new ones, and then threw away all her old ones. She wanted no corner in this apartment to prove that Lily Carter once lived here. She even filled up the nail holes in the wall with putty. After doing all this, she stood in the middle of the living room and looked around. The apartment looked like a model apartment, tidy, cold, and devoid of signs of life. Ethan probably wouldn't notice. Even if he had noticed, he would have just assumed that she had finally learned to put her things away. Step 2. Disclose the truth. The article she wrote before, A Marriage No One Saw, suddenly exploded on the 3rd day after she posted it. Not because of how good her writing is, but because someone revealed the identities of Ethan and Charlotte in the comment area. Wait a minute, is this Wall Street lawyer the Ethan Cole from Cole and Associates? Is the socialite Charlotte Hayes? I checked and found out that Ethan Cole was indeed married 3 years ago, but no one had ever seen his wife. So this man takes his lover everywhere to openly show his affection, and he also has a wife at home that he completely ignores? This is disgusting. The article was forwarded hundreds of thousands of times within 24 hours. The hashtag invisible wife appeared on Twitter. Someone compared the photo of Charlotte hugging Ethan at the charity dinner with this article, with the caption, "This fiancé also has a wife at home." The New York gossip media began to follow suit. Page 6 published a report with the headline, "Wall Street lawyer Ethan Cole trapped in disappearing wife scandal." The article describes in detail the details in Lily's article, the neglected marriage, the lover who was publicly regarded as an unmarried couple, and spending 3 years alone. Ethan's company is in a crisis of public opinion. Customers started calling to ask about the situation. The law firm's partners demanded an explanation. People in your social circle are pointing fingers behind your back. When Ethan saw the news that morning, his face was ashen. He rushed into the bedroom and wanted to ask Lily for details, but there was no one in the bedroom. He opened the closet and found that all her clothes were gone. When he went to the bathroom, her toothbrush, towel, and skincare products all disappeared. He took out his cell phone and called her. Shut down. He hit it again and again. Shut down. He opened social media and tried to find her account, but her accounts were all deleted and there was no trace of her. He stood in the middle of the living room, holding his mobile phone in his hand. For the first time, he felt an emotion he had never experienced before, not anger, not anxiety. It's fear. A deep, inexplicable fear. Because he suddenly discovered that he knew nothing about this woman. He didn't know who her friends were, she didn't seem to have any. He didn't know where she usually went, she seemed to only paint at home. He didn't know her phone number, the note he'd saved was Lily, and he didn't even remember her number. He opened the photo album on his phone and searched for Lily. There were only 3 photos in the search results. One was taken on the wedding day. She was wearing a white wedding dress and smiled very reservedly. The other 2 were photos taken at friends' gatherings. She was standing in the corner, half of her body blocked. He zoomed in on the photos and looked at her face. The face was blurry. It wasn't just that the photo was blurry, but he found that he couldn't remember what she looked like. He lived with her for 3 years. 3 years. He couldn't remember her face. Step 3, the most ruthless step. Ethan thought things were bad enough. Then he got a call from a partner at his largest client, a hedge fund. Ethan, I just received a document. It is the core information of the case we had with our rival law firm. Someone leaked all our litigation strategies to the other party. The court has received the other party's supplementary materials, which completely targeted every one of our weaknesses. Tell me, what's going on? Ethan's blood suddenly ran cold. He turned on his computer and checked the case management system. Someone downloaded all the core files into his account 3 days ago, at 3 in the morning. He was using the company's internal system, which required a password. But his password was simple, his college football team number. And Lily knew the password because he showed off to her once when he was drunk. It's her. She leaked key information about his case to a rival law firm. The case is worth $40 million. If he loses, his clients will sue him, his law firm will go out of business, and his career will be completely ruined. He sat at his desk, his hands shaking. He couldn't believe it. The quiet, meek Lily who never spoke loudly, the Lily who shut up when he said don't be dramatic, the Lily who had never had a single quarrel with him in 3 years, she did it. Not only did she write an article that ruined his reputation, but she also leaked court case information to destroy his career. He picked up the phone and called her again. Shut down. He hit it again and again. Shut down. He sent the message, Lily, what the hell did you do? No reply. He posted another, if this is about the divorce, we can talk. Just call me. No reply. He sent another one, please. Just tell me where you are. Send. Read. But no reply. She read his message. She didn't want to go back. That night, Ethan sat alone in the empty apartment. He looked around, there were no paintings of hers in the living room, no books of hers, nothing of hers. He opened the kitchen cabinet and found that her mug was missing, the sunflower-printed mug she had always used, left to her by her mother. He opened the refrigerator and found that the box of braised pork ribs she had made was still there, wrapped in plastic wrap, with a sticky note on it that said microwave for 2 minutes. He stood in front of the refrigerator and looked at the sticky note for a long time. Her handwriting is very delicate, stroke by stroke, and she writes very carefully. He never paid attention to her words. He peeled off the sticky note and turned it over to the back. There is a line of small words written on the back, the last meal. Once it's over, it's gone. He stood in front of the refrigerator, staring at the line of words, and suddenly felt as if his throat was blocked by something. He took out his cell phone and looked through his address book, trying to find someone who knew Lily. He found her mother's phone number, the note was Lily's mom. He dialed it. Empty number. Her mother died 10 years ago. He searched through the address book again, trying to find anyone who had anything to do with Lily. Her friend? She didn't. Her colleague? She works as a freelance illustrator and has no colleagues. Her relative? She said she didn't have many relatives after her mother died. He looked through the entire address book and found, in this world, no one has anything to do with Lily Carter. She is truly a person. And he, having lived with her for 3 years, had never realized this. He sat on the couch and put his head in his hands. Then he saw something pressed under the coffee table. It's a notebook. Black hardcover notebook from Moleskine. He picked it up and turned to the first page. The first page contains the date, 3 years ago, the third day after their wedding. Moved into his apartment today. He said our home, but I know, it's his home. I just live here. It doesn't matter, I can slowly make it ours. Go buy some paintings tomorrow and hang them up. He turned to the second page. I bought a few paintings and hung them in the living room. He came back and saw them and said, not bad. He looked at them for 3 seconds and then went into the study. 3 seconds. Forget it, at least he didn't say it was bad. He continued to turn. We've been married for a month. Today he took me to a law firm event. When he introduced me, he said, this is my wife, and then left. I stood alone for an hour, drank 2 glasses of champagne, and felt a little dizzy. When he came home, he asked me, did you have fun? And I said, did you have fun? I don't want him to think I don't fit in. He turned to the middle section. Half a year of marriage. Today is my birthday. He didn't remember. I waited until 11 p.m. and he came back and said, I'm too tired today. I didn't remind him. Forget it, birthdays are nothing good. My mother is gone, so birthdays are meaningless. He rolled over to his back. 1 year of marriage. Charlotte appears. I know who she is. Everyone knows who she is. I saw her standing with Ethan at the event today. She was holding his arm and smiling happily. Someone asked me, are you Ethan's assistant? I said I was his wife. The man walked away embarrassed. I don't blame that person. Because even I feel that I am not like his wife. He rolled further back. 2 years of marriage. Today I tried to talk to him about Charlotte. He said, don't think too much. I said, I didn't think much about it. I just wanted to know what your relationship is. He said, are you starting again? I shut up. Because I found that when I shut up, at least he wouldn't look at me with that impatient look. He turned to the penultimate page. I went to the hospital for a checkup today. The doctor said it might be a tumor and suggested a biopsy. I went alone and came back alone. He is not at home. He's probably with Charlotte again. I wanted to tell him, but I didn't know how. I'm afraid he'll say, why didn't you go get checked earlier? I'm also afraid that he'll say, I'll be with you because I know that's not true. What I was most afraid of was, he said, I will accompany you, and then I discovered that what I needed was not companionship, but love. And he didn't. He turned to the last page. There is only 1 paragraph on the last page. The handwriting is a bit sloppy, as if it was written in a very tired state. If I die, at least now the world knows I existed. Ethan held this notebook and sat motionless in the living room. The lights of Manhattan outside the window were bright, and the sound of traffic came up from 30 floors below, blurring into a humming background noise. He didn't cry. He just felt, my whole life is like a building that suddenly begins to collapse from the foundation. He thought his life was successful. He is one of the youngest partners on Wall Street, earning a 7-figure annual salary, living in a high-rise apartment in Manhattan, driving a Porsche, wearing customized suits, and socializing with New York's top social circles. He thought he was right. He chose a wife who would not cause him any trouble, maintained a decent marriage image, and at the same time maintained his so-called friendship with Charlotte. He thought he was rational. He doesn't quarrel, isn't impulsive, and doesn't make any uneconomical decisions. But now, holding this notebook in his hand, looking at those words he never knew existed, he suddenly realized something. All the right choices he made in his life were based on a huge mistake. He thought he chose Lily because she was suitable. But in fact, he chose her because she was safe. She would not ask him to change, would not disturb his life, and would not require him to constantly devote time and energy to maintaining the relationship like Charlotte did. He didn't marry her because he loved her, but because she made his life easy. And he used 3 years of indifference to turn a living person into a shadow. Now the shadow is gone. No, not disappearing, she erased herself, because she would rather not exist than be ignored by him again. Ethan closed his notebook and stood up. He walked into the study, turned on the computer, logged into the anonymous submission platform, and found the article, A Marriage No One Saw. He read it again. This time, he didn't treat it as a PR crisis. He reads every word. Read her writing. He never asked me what I drew today. I read her writing. I cooked delicious food, but he never asks me how I learned it. I read what she wrote. One time my fever reached 39.5 degrees, and he said, drink more hot water, and then went out. I read what she wrote. I thought that as long as I was quiet enough, sensible enough, and not troublesome enough, he would slowly see me. But I was wrong. He couldn't see me, not because I wasn't good enough, but because he never thought of seeing me. Read the last sentence. For 3 years, I thought I was running a marriage. Later I realized that I was just acting in a one-man show. After reading this article, Ethan sat in front of the computer and didn't move for a long time. Then he made a decision. He picked up his phone and sent a message to the law firm's managing partner. I'm taking a leave of absence. Effective immediately. The other party replied instantly. What? Ethan, we have the Henderson case. He turns off his phone. He sent Charlotte a message. It's over. Don't contact me again. Then he turned on his computer and started checking where Lily might go. He checked her bank records. The last purchase was at Penn Station, a train ticket to Philadelphia. Philadelphia. Her mother is buried in a cemetery in suburban Philadelphia. He checked the list of all the hospices in Philadelphia, 23. He made phone calls from house to house. Excuse me, do you have a patient named Lily Carter here? No. Lily Cole? She might have taken her husband's last name. No. Lily, he didn't know her middle name. He didn't even know her date of birth. He only knew that her birthday was in November, but he was not sure about the specific day. He searched the entire apartment, trying to find any of her papers. Passport? Not here. Driving license? Not here. Social security card? Not here. She took away everything that could prove her identity. In other words, she erased everything that could allow him to find her. He stood in the empty apartment, feeling like a fool for the first time. A fool who has lived with a woman for 3 years but doesn't even know her birthday. It took him 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, he made hundreds of phone calls, visited more than a dozen cities, and interviewed countless people. He went to a cemetery in Philadelphia and found her mother's gravestone. Next to the tombstone was an envelope with a picture of her inside. This was where she sent all her pictures. He stood in front of the tombstone and looked at the photos. In the photos, some of Lily are painting, some are eating, and some are smiling at the camera. He realized that he had never seen her smile like this before. In front of him, she always had that kind of gentle, restrained, and not too ostentatious smile. In the photo, she smiles so hard that her eyes curl up, her teeth are exposed, and her whole body is glowing. He looked at the photos over and over again, then put them back in the envelope and placed them next to the tombstone. He didn't dare take it away. Because this is what she left behind. She chose to stay here, with her mother. He had no right to take it. Then he continued looking. He went to the painting supplies store she used to go to and asked the old Greek man. The old man said, Lily? She hasn't been here for a long time. What happened to her? He didn't answer. He went to the Brooklyn Gallery where she donated her paintings and asked Maya, the curator. Maya said, she came once, put down the painting and left. I asked her where she was going, and she said to a place where no one can find it. I thought she was just moving. He went to all the hospitals where she was registered and checked one by one. Most hospitals said they had no records of her because of privacy protections. But he didn't give up. Because he suddenly understood something. He has never done anything for anyone in his life. All his efforts, all his struggles, all his successes are for himself. For your own reputation, for your own status, for your own comfort. And Lily, the woman he regarded as the right choice, gave him a chance with her disappearance, an opportunity to actually do something for someone else. Even if this is the last time. On the 5th week, he finally found it. In California, there is a small town north of San Diego called Encinitas. A small hospice center by the sea with only 12 beds. He asked it from a nurse after making the 47th call. The nurse said, we have a patient, Lily Carter, who was admitted a month ago. But she said not to let anyone know she was here. Who are you? Ethan was silent for 3 seconds. Then he said, I'm her husband. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Sir, she told us she doesn't have a husband. He bought the earliest ticket of the day, flew from New York to San Diego, then rented a car and drove along the coast highway for 40 minutes. Encinitas is a quiet town full of palm trees and surf shops. The hospice care center is on a hillside, a white building with a bougainvillea planted at the door and a view of the Pacific Ocean. He walked into the lobby. There was a Mexican woman at the front desk who looked very friendly. I'm looking for Lily Carter. The woman glanced at him, picked up the phone, dialed an internal number, and whispered a few words. Then she raised her head, looked at him and said, she said she doesn't want to see you. Ethan stood there, his palms all sweaty. Please. Just tell her, I flew across the country. I just want to see her. 5 minutes. The woman picked up the phone again and said a few words. Then she sighed. Room 7. She said 5 minutes. He walked down a long corridor with watercolor paintings on the walls, landscapes, beaches, sunsets, palm trees. He suddenly wondered if these paintings were painted by Lily. He stopped at the door of room 7. The door is ajar. He took a deep breath and opened the door. The room was very quiet. The curtains were half opened, and the sun shone in through the gaps, drawing a golden line on the floor. There was a person lying on the bed by the window. Lily. She was so thin that she was almost unrecognizable. His hair was shaved, and blue blood vessels could be seen on his scalp. The cheekbones protrude, the eye sockets are sunken, and 4 tube is inserted into his arm, and a bag of painkillers hangs on the shelf next to him. She was wearing a large hospital gown, the bones of her shoulders holding up the material like an unworn piece of clothing on a hanger. Her eyes were closed and her breathing was shallow. Ethan stood at the door, looking at her. He recalled the first time he had seen her at a painting show in Central Park 3 years ago. She was sitting on a folding chair with her paintings in front of her, the sun shining on her hair. She looked up at him and smiled. That was the quietest smile he had ever seen in his life. And now, the owner of that smile is lying on this bed, like a leaf about to fall. He walked to the bed, gently pulled up a chair, and sat down. Lily's eyes slowly opened. When she saw him, there was no surprise, no anger, or even any mood swings. She just looked at him like a stranger. "You found me," she said. The sound was very soft, like wind passing through dry leaves. "I've been looking for you for 5 weeks. Why?" Ethan opened his mouth to say something, but his throat seemed to be blocked. He took a deep breath and said, "I read your notebook. I read your article. I read everything." Lily said nothing. "I'm sorry," he said. These 2 words came out of his mouth dryly, as if he was reciting lines. He himself felt it was not enough, but Lily just looked at him, waiting. He continued, "I didn't know. I didn't know you were, I didn't know any of it. You didn't know because you never wanted to know," Lily said. Her voice was calm, not accusing, just stating a fact. Ethan lowered his head. "You're right," he said. Silence. The cry of seagulls came from outside the window, very far away and very vague. Then Ethan raised his head and looked into Lily's eyes. "I love you," he said. "I always did. I didn't know how to show it. Or maybe I didn't want to. But I do. I love you." After he said this, his eyes turned red. Lily looked at him for a long time. Then she smiled. The smile was very light and faint, just like the one she used to smile at him at home, a gentle, restrained smile that wasn't too ostentatious. But this time, there was something more in that smile. "It's mercy." "No," she said, "you loved the life that didn't include me." Ethan was stunned. "You loved your career. You loved your reputation. You loved Charlotte because she made you look good. You loved me because I didn't ask for anything." Her voice was soft, but every word was like a nail driven into his chest. "But you never loved me. Because you never knew me. And you never wanted to." Ethan's tears fell. He held her hand. It was so thin that only bones remained, and the skin was so thin that the blood vessels could be seen. "Give me a chance," he said. "Let me stay." Let you what?" Lily interrupted. "Let you watch me die? Let you feel sorry for me for a few weeks, and then go back to your life, feeling like you've done your duty?" He opened his mouth but couldn't speak, because every word she said was true. Lily pulled her hand out of his, gently, slowly. She looked at the ceiling and was silent for a long time. Then she said something. "If you really love me, then after I die, don't come looking for me." Ethan raised his head and looked at her. "Don't visit my grave. Don't put my photo on your desk. Don't talk about me in interviews. Don't write me letters you'll never send. Don't feel guilty. Don't mourn. Don't remember." Her voice became softer and softer, but more and more firm. "Because guilt is not love." Ethan sat there with tears streaming down his face. He wanted to say "I can't do it." But he knew that if he said it, it would prove that she was right. What he wanted was not love, but atonement. He was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said. Lily looked at him, the corners of her mouth curved slightly. "Thank you," she said. Those were the last words she said to him. 3 days later, Lily Carter died. The nurse said she was very peaceful when she left. It was 4 o'clock in the morning and the sun had not yet come out. She closed her eyes, as if asleep. Ethan stood in the corridor and did not go in. He kept his promise. When she died, he didn't go to the cemetery. He knew where she was buried, next to her mother, in that small cemetery on the outskirts of Philadelphia. But he didn't go. He didn't put her picture on the table. He didn't even keep a picture of her because she sent them all to her mother's tombstone, and he felt that those pictures should stay there. He did not post any condolences on social media. No interviews were given. Her name was not mentioned to anyone. He returned to New York, took up the case, and ultimately lost. The firm suffered huge losses, his partner status was revoked, and most of his clients were gone. Charlotte called him countless times, but he didn't answer any of them. She ended with a message: "You're throwing everything away for a dead Woman? He took a look and deleted the chat history. He moved out of that Manhattan apartment. Because he couldn't stand that empty living room, that wall without a painting, that kitchen without a sunflower mug. He moved to Brooklyn, to a small, one-bedroom apartment with a window facing a quiet street. He changed his job, working as a consultant in a small law firm. His income was 1/10 of his previous salary, but he didn't have to work overtime, socialize, or participate in activities that made him look successful. He started walking to and from work. He started cooking for himself. He started going for walks in Central Park on the weekends. But he had never been to that corner of the exhibition. He was afraid of seeing that place, that folding chair, those paintings, the girl who raised her head and smiled at him. A year has passed. His life returned to normal. No one mentions the article anymore. No one discusses the disappearing wife incident anymore. Charlotte married someone else. The wedding was in the Hamptons. It was a grand event and even Vogue reported on it. Ethan was not invited. He didn't want to go either. His daily life is very regular. Get up at 7 in the morning, make breakfast, go to the law firm, go home at 6 in the evening, cook, read, and go to bed at 11. He did not fall in love again. Not because he deliberately stayed single, but because he found that he didn't know how to start a relationship with a woman. Because every time he meets a woman, he wonders, if she was sick, would I notice? If she was crying, would I see it? If she disappeared, would I look for her? He doesn't know the answer. He was afraid of knowing the answer. It was the second Thursday in November. It's winter in New York, it's cold, and there's a damp, rusty, hot dog smell in the subway station. Ethan walked into the subway station after work, preparing to take the Q train back to Brooklyn. As he walked through the passage, his peripheral vision caught an advertisement on the wall. It's an advertisement for an illustration exhibition. He stopped, took 2 steps back, and looked up. It was a watercolor painting. The painting is of the Brooklyn Bridge. At dusk, the sky is orange, red, and purple. The lights on the bridge have just been turned on, and there are shadows of boats on the river. The style of painting is very familiar. The brush strokes are very light, and the colors are very transparent, as if they are breathing with color. He knows this style of painting. He stood in front of the poster and looked at it for a long time. The text at the bottom of the poster reads, Brooklyn Contemporary Art Center, City Lights Illustration Exhibition. The name of the painter is not mentioned. But he knows. He knew who painted these paintings. He stood in front of the poster, motionless. The crowd passed him by in such a hurry that no one noticed him. He stood there for about 10 minutes. Then he spoke. His voice was very soft, as if he was speaking to himself, or to someone who was not present. You were real. His voice was barely audible over the noise of the subway station. But he knew that these words were spoken. Not for her to hear. To admit it to myself. She existed. Those paintings existed. Every word in that notebook is true. Those 3 years of loneliness, those 3 years of waiting, those 3 years of being ignored, all were real. She is not a shadow. She wasn't the right choice. She is not a mistake that can be fixed. She is a person. A person who can hum songs in the kitchen, a person who can feed pigeons in Central Park, a person who can write carefully on sticky notes, a person who smiles and says thank you at the last moment of his life. And he spent 3 years pushing this person alive to a place where no one could see him. Now she's gone. And he finally saw it. But it was too late. Ethan turned around and walked into the subway car. The doors closed and the train entered the tunnel. He sat by the window and looked at his reflection in the car window. He didn't cry. His expression was calm, like a pool of water without waves. But there was something in his heart that finally came to fruition at this moment. Not relief, not atonement, not forgiveness. Just an acknowledgement. An admission that is long overdue. The train moved through the darkness, making a monotonous, rhythmic sound. The lights in the tunnel occasionally flashed outside the window, one bright and one dark, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Ethan closed his eyes. He thought of her last words. Thank you. What did she thank him for? Thank him for finally agreeing to her? Thank him for not bothering her anymore? Or thank him for finally acknowledging her existence after she disappeared? He doesn't know. But he knew one thing. From now on, he will never pretend that he doesn't know. She existed. And he missed it. That's all the truth. No need to mourn, no compensation, no need to spend your life atone for your sins. Just admit it. Then carry on living with this recognition. The train has arrived. The car door opened, letting in cold air. Ethan stood up, walked out of the car, walked up the steps, and walked into the Brooklyn night. The trees on both sides of the street were bare, and the street lamps cast the shadows of their branches on the sidewalk, like a pencil drawing. He wrapped his coat tightly and walked towards home. He didn't look back.